Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Lennox, for the kind introduction. My name is Maggie. I'm the Deputy Director of the Global New York, Canada, and my colleague Derek and I will present and discuss clean tech and medical device sectors in Canada for the webinar. I will start with a general overview of Canada and more specifically in the economics aspect, as well as an overview in the clean tech sectors in Canada. And Derek will cover the medical device sector in Canada. We will conclude the webinar with some trade show suggestions and support programs available offered by the Empire State Development. To start off, I'd like to go over some general information about Canada. Canada's capital is Ottawa, and its three largest metropolitan areas are Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. It is the second largest country in the world after Russia by land mass, but it has only 0.5% of the world's population, which is about 38 million. Canada has two official languages, French and English. Quebec is the only province where the majority of the people are Francophone. In fact, Quebec's Francophone account for approximately 90% of Canada's French-speaking population. Now I'd like to focus on the economic aspect of the Canadian market. Canada has the ninth largest economy in the world as of 2020, with a GDP of 1.644 trillion in the US dollars. In 2020, the GDP per capita in Canada was around 43,241 US dollars, and the unemployment rate as of March 2022 is 4.3%. In 2020, Canada's real GDP growth is around negative 5.31% compared to the previous year due to the COVID-19 pandemic, whereas the GDP growth is 4.6% in the 2021 and 3.9% in the 2022. In particular, Statistic Canada said real GDP rose to 1.1% in February to post its largest monthly gain since March 2021. As of April 27th, $1 equals to 1.28 Canadian dollars. To break down the GDP by sectors, agriculture is accounted for 7.4% of the GDP, and it is also one of the largest suppliers of the agricultural products in the world. Crops are mainly exported to the US. Energy sectors is about 2.9% of the GDP. Canada has abundant resources, especially in the oil and natural gas, as well as hydro. There's growth opportunities in the solar and wind power. Manufacturing is accounted for 14% of the GDP, where Canada witnessed rebounding automotive sectors anchored by the AI and autonomous. Montreal is the third largest aerospace hub in the world behind the Toulouse and Seattle. As with other developed nations, Canada's economy is dominated by the service industry, which is 70% of the GDP. Specifically, Greater Toronto Area, GTA, is the fastest growing financial service sectors in North America, with highest concentration of employment, ranking the second in the International Finance Center in North America and the eighth in the world. Clean tech is new products, service, and business models, and it is one of the high-growing sectors within Canada, which account for 3.3% of the GDP. Specifically, renewable electric vehicles, EV charging stations are growing dramatically. It does not only provide economic opportunities for the clean tech sectors, but also for Canada's natural resource, energy, manufacturing, and agriculture sector. In the state level specifically, New York exports 13.8 billion in goods to Canada annually, and the top three sectors are mineral and metals, which is accounted for 25%, equipment and machinery, which is about 15%, and agriculture about 8%. Here is a list of the top New York goods exports to Canada in 2020. I'd like to specifically mention that Optica Medical and Precision Instrument, which New York export 300 million of goods in 2020. The export numbers is rising since 2010. So why export to Canada? The US and Canada enjoy the world's largest and more comprehensive trading relations that support millions of jobs in each country. Specifically, Canada ranked as the top US export market, accounting for 17.9% of all US goods export in 2020. Within 32 US states, ranks Canada as their #1 export market. Canada also have strong economic stabilities, where Canada rebounds faster than projected through the COVID-19 pandemic. What is more, Canada ranked as the third on the FDI Confidence Index in the world, behind the US and Germany. Based on the regulation environment, political stability, tax, digital infrastructure, participation in the free trade agreement, and climate change risk. Last but not least, USMCA has ratification of the agreement, which means that free trade continues and minimizing the cross-border obstacles. So now I'd like to dive into the clean tech sectors in Canada. Canada ranks the #1 in investment for clean tech innovation and #16 for the clean tech commercialization. It is also the second place in the 2021 Global Clean Tech Innovation Index, which was in the 7th place in 2014. It's worth mentioning that Canada also ranks the first place for the funding availabilities. Other than that, about 430,500 people are hired in the clean tech sectors. And based on Statistic Canada's forecast, by 2030, the number is projected to grow almost 50% to 639,200. Lastly, 13 Canadian companies cracked it within the 2020 Global Clean Tech 100. Based on the graph on the right, we can see that from Statistic Canada estimated that in the clean tech is accounted for 66 billion, which is 3.2% of the entire Canada's GDP in 2018. The government of Canada is planning a major programs in the infrastructure investments across the country to reduce the carbon footprint and to transform how households, business, and governments carry out the daily operation. Part of the strategy involves in a commitment to achieve a net zero emissions by 2050. The strategy combines with anticipate infrastructure investments across the country can be expected to generate numerous opportunities within Canada. From the province level, Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia accounted for about 78% of the Canada's clean tech GDP. From the graph on the left, we can see that the rate of growth has been uneven across the country, with some provinces show significant growth in the clean tech sectors contributed to the GDP, while other provinces has fallen behind. Most of the clean tech growth has been powered by the clean energy manufacturing goods, such as the production of the solar panels and the service related to the design and construction of energy efficient buildings and clean electricity production. However, this growth trend has been partly offset by a decrease of construction service as large-scale projects were completed or coming to an end in the coming years. New spendings for infrastructures in the coming years is expected to restore major constructions as an additional resource of demands for smart, clean tech product. As discussed earlier, Canada ranks in the first place for the funding availabilities. And here is a number of different government fundings or commitments to clean tech. Specifically, Government of Canada has $2 billion low Economy Fund, which leverage investment in projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and 1.26 billion Strategy Innovation Fund, support formed through R&D growth, attracting and retaining investment, and advanced research. Sustainable Development Technology Canada offers SD Tech Fund, supports late-stage development and pre-commercial demonstration of clean tech solutions. Other than the government support, Export Development Canada, EDC, and Business Development Bank of Canada, BDC, provide flexible financing programs and solutions tailored to support international trade in Canada. They also provide insurance and finance, equity and venture capital, as well as a variety of consulting and advisory service to facilitate foreign trade. The graphs show Canada's key clean tech centers. As a major clean tech hub, Vancouver leads the way in the fuel cell solutions, power electronics, and wastewater treatment technology. Calgary is the heart of Canada's energy industry, with nearly a third of its GDP attributed to conventional energy, and with more than 140 companies devoted to developing and supplying clean tech products and service to the oil and gas industry. Toronto is a hotbed of innovation when it's come to developing smart clean tech approach to tough environmental challenges. The city's Green Market Acceleration programs is designed to speed the development and commercialization of the green technologies, while the Advanced Energy Center is a public-private partnership that fosters the adoption of the innovative energy technologies in Canada and worldwide. As a G7 capital and home to Canada's highest concentration of scientists and engineers, Ottawa is an international hotspot in the development and advancement of the clean tech. Montreal also demonstrates its leadership in clean tech thanks to a dynamic research communities and higher skills, which provide some cutting-edge technologies, goods and service. To talk about the next topics on medical device, I will pass the microphones to Derek to provide an in-depth information on the medical device sectors in Canada.
Thank you very much, Maggie, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here to talk over a little bit on medical devices in Canada. My name is Derek Patton. I'm Deputy Director of the Canadian office here. Although I am not Canadian, as you may hear from my accent, I am Scottish. And I just say that to help you exercise the visions of Mrs. Doubtfire or Groundskeeper Willie that might flash into your head when I started speaking. So medical devices is a significant industry in Canada. It is in fact the 8th largest medical device market in the world. We have approximately 1,500 companies employing about 35,000 people in Canada, with the market valued at about 8.6 billion US. Hotspots for this you will find mimicked through many industries in Canada and similar within clean tech also, that Ontario and Quebec are the big industrial areas where much of the activity is going on, and around about 75–80% of medical device activity will be in these two provinces, followed some way back by British Columbia. Next slide, Maggie, please. Thank you. So as Canada mimics a sort of global vision of medical devices, in that it's not dominated by few large companies. It's in fact spread out across many smaller companies, and it's dominated really by SMEs. It is a research intensive industry. Because of that, Canada, obviously to compete globally, is not as large a market as the US or Europe. So it focuses pretty heavily on innovation and new research in order to compete. It is able to draw on high-level graduates from universities such as Toronto, McGill University, McMaster, Waterloo, etc., which provide a lot of high-level graduates who have performed intensive research even at those universities. Because of the size also, you will find that Canadian companies are open and reliant to some extent on partnerships, strategic alliances, whether it's for research, production, or just sales and marketing and distribution. It's definitely a need that the Canadian companies have. Next slide, please, Maggie. And so it is an export-oriented industry. Canada does like to export from its medical devices sector. We export about 1.8 billion of medical technologies and import, though, a heavy 7 billion. So we're importing way more than we're exporting as per need. You will see some discrepancy in some of these stats we have today. I use Statistics Canada and Industry Canada as two different sources. And I think some of the stats don't include spikes in PPE, for example, that happened towards the end of 2020, as you may see in the graph on the chart there. If you see a discrepancy, I think that's what the cause is. As for Canada-US relations, US does dominate Canada's import-export activity within medical devices. Approximately 44% of total imports that US makes come from Canada within medical devices, in large part not just proximity, but the alignment we have over safety and quality standards makes that very easy to do also. In contrary, Canada does import from the US to a heavy extent. Around about 42% of all Canadian imports within medical devices does come from the US also. Next slide, please, Maggie. So for the next few slides, I've picked out a few different key sectors that might be worth looking at. These are all sectors which are in or have shown growth over recent years and have a projected growth going forward. The first, of course, is just in measurement and testing devices, which has a projected 7.2% growth over the next few years leading up to 2027, which is fairly significant. The market itself is worth about 33 billion and projected to reach that by 2025 with a compound annual growth rate of just over 4%. And again, approximately 85% of these revenues come from export activity, and 50% of which is destined for the United States. Next slide, Maggie. And so the next slide, we're going to photonics. It's an interesting subject. The Canadian government has just released 240 million funding for further research onto photonics and semiconductors, which is going to the National Research Centre. This is going to be a focus of Canada going forward. It's been a good sector recently. We have about 400 companies working in this sector already. So it's a fairly significant part of Canada's medical device activity. It generates about 4.4 billion in revenues, and exports have been up and down over the last year as Canada changed focus to COVID-19, but it's very much expected to get back to a pre-2020 rate. This is not just, it has to be said, not just related to medical devices, but photonics has a fairly transferable technology, and it can be used in other fields that are contributing to sort of Industry 4.0 and the establishment of further technologies there. Examples would be 3D machine vision, stereo vision, and triangulation. Thank you. And the last sector to talk about is optical sensors. Again, a transferable technology, which is not just being generated within medical devices, but used to fuel Industry 4.0 activity in general. It's projected to do very well over the next few years in Canada, with we're going to reach about 3.5 billion in market value by 2023, and a CAGR of 5.5%, which is fairly significant going forward. Ontario is the region where we see most concentrated clusters within this sector. Specialization in life sciences is something Ontario invests in very highly. We have significant research institutes there, such as Mars, which a lot of companies spin out of into generating new products. And that's it for medical devices. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Derek, for the detailed information on the medical device sectors in Canada. And based on the information that we shared earlier, both clean tech and medical device sectors in Canada are growing significantly. And there are multiple trade shows that we recommend in New York companies to attend and potentially export the products to the Canadian market. MedTech Canada and Mars Impact Health, as well as Canada Symbol Conference, have a focus in the medical device sectors, whereas a Canadian Water Summit and Global Energy Show has a strong focus on the clean tech sector. Specifically, I would like to point out that the Global Energy Show is Canada's largest and best attended B2B exhibitor and conference, drawing more than 50,000 attendees from more than 100 countries each year. Last but not least, as Linux mentioned earlier, that Empire State Developments offer export assistance programs, which will provide companies with customized market intelligence and research on the specific Canadian market, and assist with identifying sales agents or distributors, trade show assistance, as well as B2B matchmaking. We strongly encourage New York companies to apply the programs and benefit from it. Thank you so much for attending the webinar on the clean tech and medical device sectors in Canada.